Welcome to today's episode of What to Say and How to Say It. I'm with my favorite licensed professional counselor, Kyle Hargrove, as we dig into some topics that affect marriage, affect men, affect women, as you're trying to navigate the sticky stuff and keep your marriage from, well, blowing up. So today we're going to be talking about truth. And our title today is Healing the Wounds of Deception in Marriage. And so, as we're looking at this topic, I want to be just totally transparent and tell the truth myself here. Um, I think probably one of the Kyle's being shocked. One of the hardest things we need to understand is what the truth even is. We think we know, but we're going to kick this topic around a little bit because the truth, I love the scripture, the truth will set you free, because that's absolutely so powerful. And the truth can also injure you and your partner, and it can be the healing thing your marriage needs. So most people spend a lot of time worrying about telling the truth or not telling the truth. Like there's a lot of stress and anxiety around this. So we're going to bring
Mhm.
some potential solutions to you today, as we kick this topic around. And hopefully it'll be something that helps you in your marriage. I want you to take a second to go take our marriage assessment over on greaterimpact.org. It'll tell you just kind of a what kind of hot mess are you actually dealing with? Or should you be working with us? Like, no joke. So go do that, greaterimpact.org, take the assessment, and we'll go from there. So Kyle, you picked this topic for a reason.
I did?
It's a common one that we
Oh,
bump into, like on the daily, don't you think?
yeah. You haven't seen my roulette wheel? That's how I decide what if it's my turn, it's just I turn that wheel's getting bigger and bigger with more spaces on it. It makes the wheel of fortune look tiny. So,
That's funny.
but yeah, I don't know about you or anybody that's listening into this today, but and I don't know if it's been this way forever or if it's really what it feels like to me. And that is that the truth seems like one of the options. Like, okay, you have three options, and one of them is to tell the truth, to be truthful, to be honest, to say what actually is or what is actually perceived,
Mm,
rather than to choose the truth between a couple of other options, too. I don't recall in decades past that it has been as blatantly okay in our culture to not tell the truth. And it's just, like I say, it's just one of the options. And
mhm.
if you choose it, you choose it. I mean, I guess choose it when it's convenient to you or when it's positive. And if it's not, then choose another option. Is it
Yeah.
just me or is it becoming the thing more so than it has been in the past? Because I am, as we all are, increasing in age. And I know that there is this thing about men being old, and I think you hit it last week in our last one when you said to get off my lawn, and what's the matter with everybody and everybody, everything seems negative and I'm just an out of sorts grumpy old man. I don't want that to be the truth. I don't want that to be the case,
Hmm.
but it seems that way. That not that I'm
Mm.
grumpy, but that the truth is another option rather than what's expected.
Well, and I think that the truth can be something that's positive if we know how to deliver it, even if it's hard. I have a coach that I'm being coached by. This guy's like, I don't know, 28. He's amazing. He's a business coach, and um, he he modeled some stuff for me today, and I thought, "Ah, what a genius." But he would ask me a question, and I thought I was answering the question he was asking me, and he'd be like, "Hey, no, hang on, hold up." let's try this again. I asked you, and you'd repeat the question, and I didn't realize that I was dodging the answer. I
Hmm.
thought I was answering. And then after this happened at 9 o'clock this morning. And then I had this awareness. I was working with clients and in business meetings all day today. How often this actually happens. Like it's not just me. So when I walk into a situation and I'm trying to, what did you bring to work on today? What are you going to take a look at? Like I couldn't get a straight answer from literally anybody that I was coaching today. And I'm like, that must be the Lord trying to teach me and show me something. But it took me literally 25 minutes to get one client to be on, this is what I want to work on.
Yeah.
Because it up until that point, it was about everything else. And I kept asking the same thing over and over again. So I think as a culture, we're not that great at listening. And then on top of that, we're too fast to think that we know. Um, and then I think that makes everything just worse all the way around. But
Yeah.
when when you hear something and you already have a filter, like you're hearing it through that filter, you're not really listening to what the other person's saying. And then you're spewing rhetoric that's not even on topic. And I think that's a lot of how people miss each other in a relationship is they just they say stuff and it's honestly half of it's not useful, like maybe the last 2 minutes of what I've just done. But but
Well, what you're talking about is cognitive dissonance. And when we realize we're not on the same wavelength, we're not thinking the same way, we're not thinking about the same thing, you know, one would hope that we would stop and maybe reverse engineer the thing and say, where did we get off?
hmm
Where maybe at one point we were, meeting each other right here. You blink and it's like this.
hmm
But where did it happen and how did it happen? And probably most specifically, why did it
yeah.
happen?
Yeah.
And when there's something to be fixed or something to be recognized that's not working out well, why is the last thing people want to discuss?
Yeah.
It's the shortest of the W's. I guess there are other three-letter W words, but it's the one that they want it to be at the end.
hmm
You know, it's the last W. Who, what, where, why, and how. So how is an H word? It doesn't count. All right.
Yeah. Well,
But
and you got to do the five whys to get to the real reason. It's a powerful question. And I
yeah,
noticed, and I didn't do this the rest of the day, but I noticed in that first meeting that was taking me forever that my intuition was there's something else here that's going on. And in looking back at that, and I didn't do that with anybody else during the day, I let them be off like twice. And then I was like, zero in. But with that first person, my intuition was telling me something and I wasn't listening to it. Like I'm not even listening to myself. So now I did that throughout the rest of the day because I was like,
mm-hmm,
I don't want to ride this horse all day. This is not who I am today. So got more direct, got more clear. But to your point, when we're having cognitive dissonance or when we're creating that within ourselves because we're not listening to ourselves or we're not observing what's true, or not even being forthcoming because we're afraid. Like there's 100 reasons why. Um, Sometimes that's the question we need to be looking at. So, so when
yeah.
you're talking about telling the truth, like like what do you actually mean? Because
Let
there's
me
a
be,
lot. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Let me be transparent. It's about transparency. And what does that mean? What does it mean to be transparent? And it means that in the appropriate relationship and in the appropriate areas of that relationship,
Mhm.
everything is on the table. Now, the one we're talking about most specifically is the marriage.
Yeah.
All right. And there's a lot of transparency that should, could, and needs to occur in a marriage that you don't want to share with your buddies at the golf course or with your horse riding friends so when I say appropriate, let's make sure that that's in. I'm not saying, that everybody should be completely transparent with everybody, no matter
Yeah.
what the situation or what the idea or what the subject matter is.
hmm
There's already those of us who are the emotional types, especially if you're a man. And if you talk about that, you're an oversharer.
Hmm.
Okay. Oh, that's no, you're an oversharer. Yeah, we're not comfortable listening to you talk about your emotions.
Yeah.
So we're talking about and I'm tired of saying talking about. We are discussing the idea and the expectation that within the most intimate relationships that we have in our lives, that we are most open, and transparency is the goal. In other words, I'm not saying that there's nothing I'm afraid to say to my spouse, or that I'm hesitant, or it feels awkward, or
Mhm.
I know it's going to make me look bad. I'm talking about being willing to, even so.
So I have to ask this because I have yet to see this go well, and I need to bring it up because otherwise I'm going to think about it the whole time. Some of the things that people think are appropriate to share with their spouse, like just because you have a thought, doesn't mean that you should be sharing that thought. For example, um, women in general don't need to have their insecurities added to by their spouse saying, well, I think so and so is really attractive. Or I really, wow, look at her. She looks amazing. Like that might be true, but how about that's not wise? Um, and I've never seen it go well when the wife, and this is usually because, and I'm not trying to be sexist here, but it usually is the men that have the pornography addictions. I haven't seen that go well when the wife is the accountability partner. She's taking all of his stuff personally usually. And so in those spaces, truth is super not useful in some way. Like, hey, will you pray for me? I'm kind of struggling is one thing. But yeah, so I just wanted you to know I was acting out on my affair thing again, and I picked up a girl last night in the bar. It's like, all right, that was what you fantasized about. Like that's where your brain is. Like I don't know how helpful some truths are, especially when they're just thoughts, right?
Right.
Now, when those things affect the other person, then it's like, yeah, you need to get some help and deal with this. Absolutely. Um, but I don't know. Am I thinking about this wrongly? Because that's
No,
one
you're not.
area of truth that's like, hold up.
Yeah. Here's here's what we hope we can assume. We can't assume it every time, but we hope we can. If you're an adult and there's been a problem before, and the thoughts that you're having are related to that same problem, again, the hope is that you have the wherewithal to run to whoever it was whoever it is that you can say this to,
Hmm.
whoever, whether it's a therapist or a pastor or an accountability group or whatever. The
Hmm.
hope is that you realize this leads nowhere but to
Right.
trouble unless you personally, individually take accountability for it and go get help with it.
Yep. Yeah.
Because allowing those thoughts to flourish and to grow always, always ends in acting on it.
Yep. Well, and it doesn't do anything like I'm not saying don't tell your spouse when you're struggling. That's not what I'm saying.
Sure.
But what I am saying is that you don't sit down to dinner with the chicken pot pie that your wife just made and say, you know what, I was just thinking about my mom's chicken pot pie and how good it really
Mhm.
was. She might be strong enough to go, yeah, you're right. It was good. I hope mine is as good. Hope you enjoy it, and not take that personally. Like, I would think that that's probably not that big a deal. But when you start comparing women to other women and, you know, why is, why are our kids like this? And how come you don't mother like so and so or whatever it is? You've just, and some of the thoughts we have, like, I don't want to know if my husband, this is going to sound terrible, but I don't want to know if my husband's thinking about buying another tractor. I That sounds
If
awful.
tractors are the only problem, you're in good shape. Your
Well, it's
relationship is
not
in.
even a problem. It's just that like I don't there's stuff that I think he should work out with men in his life. He probably doesn't want to hear about the saddle soap that I want or the cowboy
Yeah,
magic I want to put in my horse's hair either. That's not transparency stuff. But my point is that, just because you're having thoughts doesn't mean your spouse needs to know all of them, right? But
right.
when you've got stuff that matters in your relationship, you need to be talking about it. You need to be real and present in the now, showing up in that space.
Let me, if it's okay, in our space here, be transparent.
You keep saying that.
Well,
You
and I mean
have
it.
at it. Yeah, go at
I
it.
want to be real, and it's not it's not terribly awkward for me to say this, but I struggle with depression. It's something that in probably the second half of my adult life has been, I'm not going to call it omnipresent, but it's always waiting behind the corner to attack.
Mhm. I'm sorry.
And it's important when you are married to someone
Hmm.
that you are able to be transparent about things like that when you
Yep.
realize the problem has returned, when you realize the problem is, we frequently use the word spiraling
Yeah.
with depression because it is difficult once that spiral begins to rein it in for
Hmm.
for most people who are depressed and who don't have the tools in their toolkit to stop it where it is. It's going to spiral until that spiral reaches a point, and we're going to call that the bottom.
Yeah.
It is important for me to be able to say to Danny, my wife, I need to let you know I'm on the struggle bus.
Mm.
And that happened not too long ago. And her her response to me was, thank you for trusting me with that.
Yes. Perfect.
And of course, she's my wife. She knew something was not normal. She says, I
Hmm.
thought maybe you were stressed about finances or the Dallas Cowboys or, something like that. Of course, I'm
Yeah.
no longer stressed about the Cowboys this season. But anyhow, it was important for her that I be transparent because then she knows because we've had discussion before we ever married. She needed to know that
Hmm.
this is a part of what you're. This is a part of the package that you're
Yeah.
buying into,
Yeah.
and so she was appreciative, and it was a relief to me that
Mm.
rather than her trying to tell me to put my big boy pants on or to pull myself up by my bootstraps or
Yeah.
whatever the 100 things are that people tell depressed people thinking that it'll
Right.
actually help.
Right.
Instead of something like that, she says, thank you so much for letting me in on that because
Hmm.
now she knows how she can help, how she can
Yep.
be a part of that. And she can't fix it,
Right.
but she can minimize making it worse
Yes.
completely unintentionally, of course. I
Yep.
hope she doesn't help me to be depressed on purpose.
Yeah.
But, but
No, I think that's a good point. And, first of all, I'm sorry that that's a thing. Like, it's real.
it is
And
real.
I've had postpartum depression. Every kid I've cranked out, and I don't know what I would have done if Jim had not been supportive. Like, I could call him at work and just say, I'm not safe, and he would come home. Like, it was that bad. And that was before I
Mhm.
got on medication. But you need that level of support in your marriage.
Yeah.
That's so important. Yeah.
Well, and let's talk about some of the things that happen when we're not transparent.
Okay.
Okay. Because, and I'll even go a step further with the story about my experience because here's what could happen to anyone. If I were to not be transparent about my depression, yet my behavior is different. It's changed. It's not normal.
Hmm.
And what's not normal about it is all negative. If my regular sunshiny self is no longer sunshiny, and I'm not taking calls from my own kids or
Hmm.
my dad or my best friends. If I can't, because that's the way it gets for me. Is I don't want to talk to anybody. So if she notices that, yet I haven't said anything, she's going to want to know why that's happening.
Yeah.
And if I'm not telling her, probably for a period of time anyway, she's going to hesitate to ask me about it because she doesn't want to get in the way of anything.
Hmm.
So what's going to happen, I think, in any situation, in any relationship, when transparency isn't the theme of the day, is overthinking.
Mm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Um, I don't know what's going on with somebody. All I know is they're not okay.
Hmm.
Okay. Or they're not as okay as they normally are. And I don't know why. I can't put my finger on it. Uh, but I see it and it doesn't feel good to me and it doesn't feel good for me to watch my spouse
Yep.
suffering.
Yep.
So what might it be? Is there something that I need to know? Has he been to the doctor and didn't tell me and there's something wrong?
Yep.
Um, is he unhappy in the marriage? Is he depressed about his kids? Is he could what? Who knows?
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
So the human nature, the default setting for the human being when we begin overthinking, or as we talk about in my practice, being too thinky. Okay. I like to simplify things. When people get too thinky, the next step naturally is to awfulize the possibilities,
Hmm.
to take whatever the possibility is that I'm thinking about, because I don't have all the information, and I'm going to run them all the way to the end of the gamut in
Yep.
terms of what it could be. And
Hmm.
so, if it's, has he been to the doctor? I know that there are two or three health concerns. Did he go and get bad news and he's not telling me? Then the next thing I
Yeah.
went and caught the cancer and
Yeah.
and I'm going to die.
Yeah.
And it's not, it is someone's imagination running away with them, but it's not in some unreasonable kind of way.
Oh, I get those. My husband had an upper aortic aneurysm in 2014.
Oh my,
It is miraculous that we
that
caught
he,
it, that he had
mhm,
surgery, that he lived. And that was terrifying. Like, it's absolutely terrifying. Every single day, when we knew this thing could explode at any time, if he was 5 minutes late, I was just kaboom, right? I learned to wrangle that because it was getting to the point where it was making me crazy
yeah,
because I was terrified all the time.
yeah. You're
And
seeing
that
him
wasn't,
dead on the side of the road in an accident, and
ugh,
you're in your mind,
yes,
it's as real as it can be, even though it didn't even happen.
exactly. And to your point about overthinking and then awfulizing, we ended up just navigating that together. I went to the doctor's appointments. I was just with him in that. I did physical therapy at 5 in the morning with him when we, after surgery, I went with him, worked out with him just because and it was hard for me to see him go back to work, but, uh, and we're fine now. This was years ago, almost 10 years. Like, he's miraculous. But to your
Wow.
point, we're just, your brain naturally does all those things, right? And so then you really need to manage the openness about it because otherwise you're if you're different, then your spouse is going to be wonder. And I love the fact that I can just go to him and say, "Hey, you seem something. Is everything okay?"
Yeah.
And usually it's some situation that he's dealing with. He's like, "Well, I got this problem I'm thinking a lot about at work, or something like that, right?" So
Yeah.
I don't want to waste any energy on worrying about that. And so I know I can just ask and get a straight answer and we're good. And I'm okay. Not about me. Check box, move on.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of couples who they don't do that. Like, I've
Mm-mm.
seen couples where the husband's lost his job and been out of work for months,
Oh, yeah.
left the house every day as if he was going to work. And then
I
there's
had that
no
guy in
money.
therapy for 6 months. This happened.
Yeah. And it's like, well, you got to tell them.
Yeah.
Like you're right. Like it's there's clearly something wrong. There's no money in the bank account. Like there, yeah, major things.
Yeah. I had a client that did this for 6 months. And so during the day, while he's still trying to get another job, he's driving Uber and he's delivering pizza.
Mm,
Now that's commendable.
right. Good on him for
Okay.
bringing home.
But but it's not truthful. And that's a big deal. There's a
Yeah.
lot of trauma and stress that can come with that. And that's probably, one of the other byproducts. And that's kind of what we're talking about today. And, we usually have all these steps to make it right, but these are some of the things that can happen. And sometimes we have to look at this side of things. But you have the being too thinky. And then you have the increased, I like to see this book title, Increased Anxiety. Who needs it? Okay. And nobody needs it. We all have plenty as things are. And it's imperative that we all manage our anxiety and know what's true and what's not. Well, that's hard to do these days, depending on where you're getting your information. But to know that it's not just increased anxiety for you because you have something that needs to be shared, but you're not sharing it. That's poison. Um, but it's increased anxiety times two, at least. You know,
Mhm.
maybe it's to the second power, uh, exponentially. That's math, and I don't math. So, but I know
I don't math.
exponentially is a lot more than adding.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
The outcome is a lot more. So maybe it is increased exponentially when you hold in what's true and what needs to be shared. That's what we forget. We forget that by being honest and truthful and transparent, that God can use other people that he has also chosen for this purpose in order to help bear our burdens,
Yeah.
to step in and be. I was chatting with a friend this afternoon who called. When you're a therapist, this happens. People call you and say, I need your advice on how to deal with somebody that's in my life. Okay, okay. But, it ends up being at this place where you haven't been placed there to fix this guy. You haven't
Mhm.
been put there to solve his problems. You've been put there to love him.
Yeah,
God doesn't expect you to go in and solve your friend's emotional difficulties and
right.
mental problems. It is so critical and pivotal for us to learn and apply that our abilities aren't needed by God.
Hmm.
He's got the corner on that one.
Yeah.
What he's
Right.
looking for from us is not our ability, it's our availability.
Yeah.
And people can't avail themselves. People can't be there for you if you're not honest about what's going on with you,
Yeah. That's
including
true.
your spouse.
Hmm.
So it's like having money in the bank and not having a checkbook or a debit card or Cash App or Zelle or
Venmo.
any of the 98 ways we have of
Yes.
transferring money now.
Yeah. There's a lot.
So the result of that, of the being too thinky and the increased anxiety, which we could give 1,000 examples of that, and it's just going to take up time, is unnecessary trauma.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily new trauma. It's that it can bring your spouse to relive previous trauma
Hmm.
if you're not transparent, if you're not honest, because they're going to be doing the overthinking, and there may have been problems in the past. Maybe I am someone who has dealt with a gambling addiction in the past. Maybe I am someone who's had multiple illicit affairs in the past. Maybe I am someone who has struggled with suicidal thoughts in the past.
Hmm.
When I clam up and go dark and don't talk about it and don't say what I'm feeling, even if I don't know what it is, I can at least admit that I'm not all here right now.
Yeah. No, that's fair.
And there's no spouse anywhere that I'm aware of that's not going to go straight back to those major problems and make the assumption, if you're not telling me about it, then you don't want me to know about it. And if you don't
Mhm.
want me to know about it, it's bad. And if it's bad, it's probably this.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, because it's just normal for us to try to explain what's going on in her world and the reality of it. And yeah, I want to put some responsibility on everybody here. You know, I think if you notice something, ask, hello, like
Yeah.
that's what you do. You observe, you go inquire, inquire.
Lovingly.
Yeah, this is your person. If they're upside down and you can see they're upside, like chances are it's probably not about you. And maybe it is, and you need to know that, but go ask, figure it out. Because you don't ignore the pain of people around you if you love them. You
Yeah.
have to inquire, you have to ask.
Well, when you've walked through a difficulty with your spouse before and you came out of it on the other side, with a new special bond because, there were all the things were involved, an act or a habit or whatever it is that was hurtful to the marriage, the honesty, the transparency that allowed us to see it for what it is, do what needed to be done. And the spouse was patient. The spouse was forgiving.
Yep.
The spouse was all these things. And we get down here to the place where is this happening again? I don't know of a loving spouse on the planet that if they find out that their husband or wife is spiraling for some reason or any reason, isn't going to be on that. We've done this before. We can do it again. They're going
Hmm.
to be on that like white on rice on a paper plate in a glass of milk in a snowstorm.
That was a lot.
Yeah, they're going to be all over it. Okay.
You're gonna be all over it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Make
No,
no
that's
mention of my movie choices from the things that I quote, but
that well, and to your point, I think this exists pretty easily in healthy relationships. People shut this down when they're hurting in their marriage, and I want to challenge people in that. We had a semi-decent therapist during all of the adventures we had in solving our marriage issues, and but she wasn't great at a lot. But one of the great things she did was she asked us, "Can you choose to care about that?" And that was an interesting question sometimes because you're sitting there and they're doing this method that I personally hate and have not seen useful, which is take the crisis of the week and you give me your version and then you give me your version and this just let me just destroy you in front of and your reputation and your credibility and your character in front of this other audience member here. Like it's a stupid method. Um,
mhm.
so we were doing that kind of stuff. But one of the questions that she would ask is, can you choose to care about what they're saying? And because I'm a person of integrity, I had to have the awareness that I didn't want to initially. And then, so what's that in me? Because that's not Jesus.
Mhm.
And I had to deal with that. And I appreciated the question. And then we moved on to a different therapist because that really was about the only thing she did well. And this whole crisis of the week thing wasn't a method I wanted to participate in anymore. And neither did Jen.
Yeah.
So, because there's no data around it that says it's good. But the thing is that we can, when we're not in a good space, we need to choose to care. Be the friend. This is Gandhi. Be the friend, or be the person you want the world to be, or whatever that is, right? Be the change you want to see in the world. That's what he said.
Yeah.
So you got to show up as you want to be treated because that's who you are. That's who Jesus is.
Right. And that's, speaking of Jesus, that's the solution when it comes to the because not telling the truth is always 100% of the time in one way, if not the main way, is about fear.
Hmm.
I'm afraid of the results of the consequences if I tell the truth.
Right.
Even if it's not me, they're going to hurt. Even if it's somebody else, I don't want to hurt somebody else. Whatever it might be, it could be 100 different things, 100 different fears, 100 different people.
Mm.
It's a lot of people.
Yeah.
Um, but the cure to a lack of transparency or an absence of it is character. And if you want to have these kind of character, then just go straight to the scripture and look at the character of Jesus
Yep.
and say, you know what, if the if the smallest thing I do as a follower of Christ is to work hard to do every day what I can to develop and have and exhibit the character of Christ, I'm pretty happy with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello.
So I'm gonna look at two of them right here, and the first one is since it's about fear, guaranteed.
Hmm.
What is the thing that we do where fear has to be present? There is no courage absent of fear.
Correct.
There's no need for it.
Right.
Courage is doing what you need to do in spite of the fact that you're afraid of it because you
Yeah.
know it's the right thing to do.
Do it scared. Take
Yeah.
courage. Like how many times in the Bible are we told to
Yeah.
take courage? Do the thing that scares you right now. Yep.
And when we do that, when we do the courageous thing,
Hmm.
we what's the word I was going to say and it just flew away. We exhibit, we imbue, we give away on a big old platter. We hand it to our spouse, and it's respect.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
respect you enough for you to know the truth,
Mm.
even though my fear may be mirrored in you. You may have the same fears I do. And when I tell you the truth, we're both going to be afraid.
I
But
love
not
that
knowing,
though.
not knowing it creates more fear than anything you could possibly actually be going through.
I love that you said that. Yeah, Mark Golston is my favorite therapist, PhD style, and he's dead. He died last year or the year before. But
Hmm.
in his book, Talking to Crazy, he talks about how he and his wife decided to work on their marriage, and she came to him. She said, "I'm tired of hating you."
Whoa.
Yeah, like that's a
That
brutal
takes a lot of
truth.
energy.
It does. And he's like, "I'm tired of hating you too. Like, I don't." And she's like, "How do we fix this?" He's like, "I don't know exactly, but it's good that we both kind of want to, and but telling the truth about I see this all the time with and it's in both women and men where they're afraid to tell their spouse what they actually think, and it's just like, can we please stop dragging this out? Like at
Yeah.
some point when your kids are out of the house, you'll finally have enough. Like that's when that's and but you could do something different today. Like why are you tolerating living lies? That's sin. Ugh, stop it. Okay, I'll get off the soapbox. I get a little lit on that one.
I always have one foot on a soapbox.
Wondered about that.
Gives me a safe place.
Is
So
it,
I can
is
just,
it?
in one step, I can be in a safe place, and that's where I'm criticizing and judging. So,
Yeah, I
well,
know, right? Yeah, me too. Me too.
I've enjoyed our conversation today, and if I would have a parting shot, it's about that character.
Yeah.
Yeah, who do you want to be? Who do you want your wife or your husband to see you as?
Hmm.
Do they want to see you as an insecure, mumbling, fumbling fool, or do they want to see you as somebody who brings out the courage and the respect when when things get tough?
Yeah.
So that's that's my charge. And even though I think most of us can say we've exhibited courage somewhere at some time in the past, I don't know that all of us exhibit it every time we're afraid.
Right.
So I'll take my lumps there as well.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I
Um,
think that's all of us.
yeah,
So,
but know that when you're not being transparent, you're not being honest, and when you're not being honest, the truth is being hidden. And whether
mhm.
you come out and say something is this way when really it's that way, or whether you just don't say anything, a lie's a lie.
Yeah. Now that's fair. And you cannot grow a relationship on lies. And the truth is what sets us free. 100%.
Bingo.
Yeah. So I want to encourage you to hit that subscribe button today And listen to that next episode, dealing with conflict, deepening your relationship with God, yourself, and others. And reach out to us. You can if you live in the state of Texas, you can connect with Kyle. And Kyle's email is
Kyle Hargrove, LPC at gmail.com.
reach out to Kyle Hargrove, LPC at gmail.com if you live in the great state of Texas, and he can help you personally in those spaces that we talked about today. Otherwise, we'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for popping by.